The year is 2025, and a silent crisis is unfolding across the United States, one that isn't making front-page news every day, but one that's changing the lives of millions of Americans. It's not a war, nor a financial crash. It's something more basic, more human, and more immediate. It's food. From the border towns of Texas to the political heart of the nation, a growing number of American cities are experiencing a food security disaster that experts are calling the worst in modern history. The cost of groceries has soared. Supply chains have frayed. Government assistance programs are overwhelmed. And for many families, putting food on the table has become a daily battle. This is the story of the 2025 food crisis in America. It's a story of 5 cities: Brownsville, Des Moines, San Francisco, Kansas City, and Washington, D.C., each facing their own version of a national nightmare. In Brownsville, Texas, a city just north of the US-Mexico border, residents are confronting a harsh reality that blends poverty, inflation, and isolation. This region has long struggled with high rates of food insecurity, but the situation in 2025 has become dire. With average food prices in Texas increasing by over 24% compared to 2024 levels, even staple items like eggs, milk, and rice have become luxuries for working families. The collapse of regional grocery suppliers, many of which relied on cross-border trade with Mexico, has made the city especially vulnerable. Border tensions and increased inspections have delayed food shipments, while new tariffs on imported produce from Latin America, enacted as part of broader nationalist economic policies, have led to sharp price hikes. For families in Brownsville, whose median household income is far below the national average, even a minor increase in food costs can push them into hunger. School meal programs, once a lifeline for low-income children, are now underfunded and rationed. Food pantries, some operating out of church basements and community centers, are seeing demand double overnight. And in neighborhoods already dealing with unemployment and poor infrastructure, the lack of affordable nutrition is contributing to spikes in malnutrition and health complications. Meanwhile, in Des Moines, Iowa, the crisis wears a different face. Des Moines lies at the heart of America's agricultural belt. It should, by all logic, be immune to food shortages. But even here, where corn and soy fields stretch to the horizon, the food crisis has struck with brutal irony. Farmers in Iowa have been hit with a perfect storm of economic and environmental pressure. Input costs, fuel, fertilizer, seeds, have all exploded due to global commodity instability and continued disruptions in international supply chains. On top of that, the 2024 drought devastated harvests across the Midwest. Federal crop insurance payouts have lagged behind, and with banks tightening lending in 2025, many farmers simply can't afford to replant. This has led to a sharp contraction in local food production. While grain exports to international markets continue, much of the food grown in Iowa doesn't stay in Iowa. The state's major agricultural output is now destined for foreign buyers who can afford the inflated prices, leaving local grocery stores with limited inventory and jacked-up costs. The very people responsible for feeding the country are now struggling to feed themselves. In some areas of Des Moines, the concept of a food desert has become more than academic, it's a lived reality. Residents in low-income neighborhoods are traveling miles just to find a store that stocks fresh produce. Local schools have shortened lunch menus. Elderly residents on fixed incomes are skipping meals. And community organizers are sounding the alarm that, without federal intervention, the situation could deteriorate into outright famine for the most vulnerable. Travel west to San Francisco, and the food crisis takes on a more surreal dimension. Here, in one of the wealthiest cities in the nation, the cost of living was already astronomical. Now, food prices have outpaced even housing costs in some metrics. The average cost of a basic grocery basket in San Francisco has risen 36% in just the last 6 months. A gallon of milk can now run close to $9, and fresh fruits are out of reach for most working-class families. The wealth gap in the Bay Area has turned food access into a brutal mirror of inequality. For tech executives and venture capitalists, the crisis is an inconvenience. For service workers, Uber drivers, and single parents scraping by in the city's outer neighborhoods, it's a disaster. The tech sector, still recovering from the layoffs of 2023 and 2024, has left behind a trail of economic instability. Rents have not fallen significantly, while wages for essential workers have stagnated. The result is that many San Franciscans are choosing between food and housing. Tent encampments are growing again in the Mission District and near Civic Center, and mutual aid groups are stepping in where the city has failed. Food banks are overwhelmed, with lines snaking around blocks and ration limits strictly enforced. Meanwhile, supply chain issues specific to the West Coast, such as port congestion in Oakland and delays at the Los Angeles docks, have made it harder for perishables to reach store shelves in time. California's progressive image and supposed abundance are masking a grim reality. One of America's richest cities is watching its working class go hungry. In Kansas City, Missouri, the crisis is compounded by geographic disadvantage and government neglect. Often overlooked in national policy debates, mid-sized heartland cities like Kansas City have become canaries in the coal mine for systemic breakdown. The city has seen a 30% increase in food insecurity since January 2025, driven by a toxic mix of inflation, utility rate hikes, and reduced federal food assistance. Kansas City used to rely on regional trucking networks to keep its grocery stores well-stocked. But rising diesel prices and a shortage of drivers, many of whom left the industry during the 2024 recession, have created logistical bottlenecks. Even the city's once reliable network of farmers' markets has faltered, as rural producers now find it more profitable to sell to buyers in wealthier metro areas. The result is that low- and middle-income families in Kansas City are being priced out of their own local food system. For many, SNAP benefits now cover only a fraction of their monthly food needs. The expiration of pandemic-era enhancements to food aid has left households scrambling. Children are showing up to school undernourished. Hospitals are reporting rising cases of diet-related illness. And local politicians are warning that unless action is taken soon, civil unrest could follow. Already, there have been protests at City Hall, where residents are demanding emergency funding, rent control, and price caps on groceries. The frustration is palpable, and it's spreading. And finally, in Washington, D.C., the epicenter of political power, the crisis is an indictment of the very system that was supposed to prevent this kind of catastrophe. While embassies and government offices bustle with activity, the city's working-class neighborhoods are descending into desperation. Southeast D.C., Ward 8 in particular, has been hit hardest. Grocery chains have closed stores due to crime concerns and low profit margins. What's left behind are overpriced corner stores that sell processed food at inflated rates. Residents who once relied on public transit to access larger grocery outlets are now constrained by fare hikes and service cuts. The irony is striking. The federal government's own employees, janitors, security guards, administrative aides, are struggling to afford lunch in the shadow of the Capitol. The broader bureaucratic response has been sluggish. While Congress debates food aid reform, the USDA's emergency food distribution programs are buried under red tape. Nonprofits are filling the void, but donations have dried up in a time when more people than ever are seeking help. DC's status as a showcase city is cracking, and global observers are taking note. International media outlets are reporting on lines outside soup kitchens, just blocks from the White House, portraying America's food crisis as a symptom of deeper national dysfunction. And they are not wrong. Each of these cities reflects a different aspect of the same underlying crisis. Whether it's Brownsville's border economy, Des Moines' farming collapse, San Francisco's extreme inequality, Kansas City's logistical choke points, or Washington, D.C.'s policy paralysis, the food crisis is exposing the cracks in America's foundation. And it's not just about hunger. It's about the social contract. When people can't afford to eat, they begin to question the legitimacy of their institutions. Trust in government collapses. Community bonds fray. Crime rises. And political extremism finds fertile ground. The root causes of the 2025 food crisis are complex. Climate change is clearly playing a role. Extreme weather events have disrupted harvests from California to the Carolinas. Global supply chains, still unsteady after the COVID-19 pandemic, have failed to adapt to new geopolitical realities. Protectionist trade policies have backfired, limiting the availability of affordable imports. Inflation, driven by a mix of monetary mismanagement and supply-side shocks, has eroded purchasing power across the board. But perhaps the most damning factor is political inertia. The crisis didn't arrive overnight. It has been years in the making. Warnings from economists, food policy experts, and community advocates were ignored. Budget cuts to agricultural subsidies, food stamps, and infrastructure went unnoticed until the system broke. And now, with the country facing one of its worst domestic crises in decades, the response remains fragmented and inadequate. Without coordinated federal action, a national food security strategy, major investment in agricultural modernization, expanded assistance programs, and international cooperation, the crisis will only deepen. The hunger problem in America is no longer confined to the margins. It's mainstream. It's structural. And it's tearing at the social fabric. What's happening in 2025 should serve as a wake-up call. If the richest country in the world can't guarantee that its people have enough to eat, then something has gone fundamentally wrong. Food is not just a commodity. It's a human right. And unless America begins to treat it that way, the consequences will be far more dangerous than just empty stomachs. They'll be felt in every corner of society, from our classrooms to our courtrooms, our hospitals to our voting booths. Hunger is the kindling for something much larger. And if we don't act now, that spark may become an inferno.